Welcome to ReSounding, a podcast exploring the power of the arts in advocacy and in action. We talk with artists and activists, taking a deep dive into questions surrounding the causes of displacement, the strength and the vulnerability of people on the move, and the potential of the arts to shine a light on social injustice and impact people's lives for the better. My name is Chris Nicholson, and this month I spoke to Laura Nyahuye, a storyteller, writer, creative director, artist, and the founder of Maokwo, a creative community supporting minoritized humans and artists in the UK. Laura spoke to us about creating spaces of safety for sharing personal stories and fueling collective change through radical love. Laura, great to meet you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Good to meet you too.
I wanted to start this conversation. Your work is so broad and covers so many areas that are going to be interesting to the Art27 network. But I wondered if we could just begin from yourself as an artist and a storyteller. And perhaps you could describe a bit of your own artistic work for us.
Yeah, it is quite broad. I grew up around creativity, and it wasn't like a conscious decision to say, okay, I'm going to be like a creative human in some way. It was more like of absorbing my surroundings. My mom was a seamstress, so she would always be like cutting fabrics, designing things, and chucking away on the machine. My dad was what we officially in this country call a dramaturg or producer. Yeah, I grew up around quite a lot of creativity, weaving of baskets, making of, wire. I don't know if you've seen some wire cars that, that normally, like most young people, they play around with, especially in the African continent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I later on found out I went into the official learning of arts here in the UK. That's when as a mature student. So when I came over, I just decided to broaden my horizons, if you like. And I explored a lot of different subjects, trying to really discover and understand what it is that really speaks to me. So I did printing, I did a lot of ceramics, I explored jewelry making. I explored quite a lot, which was quite an exciting time. But when I did my final collection was when I think I would say I started to really strongly link my work with my heritage and my work with whatever was going on in my life at that time, which was quite a challenging time because I had migrated. I was going through quite a lot in my own personal space. So that all of that, I could see that coming out through my collection. And I really started to have a strong understanding of how arts was such a strong tool as a form of therapy. Actually, it would take me out of the space that I was in, and I would literally forget about all that, and I would just be making. But in that, I was actually manifesting whatever was going on here. And I saw home, I saw Zimbabwe, I saw my grandparents, I saw my aunties in my work, and it wasn't like a conscious decision. It's really it's really fascinating and very valuable. It's something that I really hold dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, was your work still in a range of forms? Was it still ceramic and a mixture of visual arts?
No, at that point now, I got interested at some point when I was nearing the end of my studies. My attention was caught onto body adornments. So discovering body adornments for me and understanding how they work in different cultures spoke to me. So that was a very strong turning point because I could identify, because I used to struggle quite a lot with making small pieces because I would find myself wanting to be somehow sculptural, even when I was exploring textiles. I would want to build. I always wanted to build something. Even when I'm like, okay, it's a print, but I would find myself like, okay, how do I make this more 3D?
Yeah.
If it's a small ring or a chain, I wasn't satisfied. I'll be like, I want it. There's something missing. I need it to speak to me. So the moment I came across body adornments, that was it. I related to them so much, especially with the Maasai tribe. I related to them a lot because there was story in there.
Yeah.
There was a heritage, there was culture, there was identity. And yeah, it really spoke to me. So that was my journey. That's how my journey started with body adornments and storytelling. With storytelling, it was quite, I can say, like at this point, I became a storyteller. It was just part of life, part of how we were raised again back home, because we were just raised around stories, around the fire. We just, yeah, we just immersed in stories. So I loved reading. Growing up, I loved reading and writing. But funny enough, I stopped all that when I came to the UK, and I think it was more of like the challenges that I faced. Like I literally, that part of my brain literally switched off. Like it was like it never existed until at some point it came back.
Yeah. Do you know, I read somewhere that you grew up with this idea of the UK from the books you've been reading, which were quite kind of romantic visions of the UK. And as you were saying that you kind of turn off that part of yourself, I kind of that line of what the UK is must have. I mean, that must have come to an abrupt stop when you actually reached the UK.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Funny enough, yeah, it did.
It's not all Mills and Boon. It's not all.
No, it wasn't a bed of roses.
But you describe the body adornment. You describe a storytelling in itself. That there's story in the body adornment pieces that you created. And when I look at those, I've looked at the pictures online, which I guess are maybe later work than your student work. But I see sculpture. I see material. The material is very striking. The colors are very striking, and the fact that it's so connected to body. Clearly, I mean, it's body adornment, but when you see it visually, it's really the physical nature of it is really striking. That I can imagine that it can contain a lot.
It is you're quite right, because some of them I create them as with the understanding that okay, this is a headpiece, but it's always becoming something else, depending on who is holding the piece,
Right.
because sometimes it becomes a shoulder piece, sometimes it becomes a wall hanging.
Right.
So it can be what it wants to be according to whoever is, holding the piece, whoever is come across it. And I've used these the body adornments for different. I've used them in different ways. Sometimes they are conversation starters. So it's something that I can bring to a workshop, to a summit, to maybe setting up the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets the conversations going.
Mm-hmm.
It's a memory for some, whereby they touch it, they feel it. It reminds them of a certain time back, wherever maybe they come from, Kenya or India, or wherever it is. It changes. And I personally find it quite fascinating how the pieces change according to whoever is in company of the piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You grew up in Zimbabwe. as I
Yes.
understand. Is body adornment something you grew up with? Those kind of pieces?
No, I want to say I grew up with those sort of pieces because for me it was quite a discovery,
Yeah.
but very relatable at the same time. And I think the relation really comes into like it's the connection with how we have different artifacts and how we have like specific prints. So I could relate to it, even though really I don't have any body adornments from Zimbabwe that I could point to say,
Hmm.
okay, we have specific body adornments.
Hmm.
Yeah. With the materials that I use, they are the ones that really speak to my Zimbabwean heritage.
So you spoke about the wire cars, for example.
Yes, yes, yeah. So you find that I use quite a lot of wire and plastic. So the plastics that I use are more of cuts, used fabric. I love using used fabric. I like going to charity shops,
Okay.
finding different objects, or and then I just they're all integrated in
Yeah.
this body. It's a mix of sometimes, yes, I do go and buy some things and I mix them up with the body adornment. So yes, we use a lot of wire back home
Yeah.
and we recycle a lot of plastics. And going back to when I was growing up, it wasn't necessarily called like named recycling, like what we like being environmentally friendly. It's survival, you know. Even up to now, when I go home, it's we see some young people who are carrying bags of plastics for recycling and in order to make a living.
Hmm.
Yeah, I find it quite interesting. The materials, because it wasn't again it wasn't like a conscious decision, like, okay, I'm going to use wire, I'm going to use plastics, I'm going to use this because it connects with my home. But it's just finding yourself gravitating to that for whatever the reason is, be it it's making sense as a part of research, but the fact that it's coming back to your childhood, it's coming back to your heritage,
Hmm.
it's quite key for me.
Hmm.
It brings me so much joy.
And it takes on an extra layer listening to you, with the knowing that you had moved country, you had migrated country at that point, and you were in Britain, and I wonder how that art was received in Britain, and how you as an artist felt you were received in Britain, and the kind of responses you had to your work, and to you as well. Looking at your current work with Maokwo and your different projects, I wonder about that early experience in Britain as an artist for you.
My experience in Britain was it really changed my plan as an artist, because my initial plan was I've always loved like to create something for the catwalk. So my plan was, okay, these body adornments will go on the catwalk. I'll collaborate with a fashion designer and they will wear these, models will wear this, and that has always been my vision.
Hmm.
But because my experience in Britain was different, it wasn't welcoming. It didn't readily welcome me as an artist. The doors were really closed. So I remember like there's this memory I will always share when I was in a class and I was the only black woman in that class, and somebody commented this and they said, "Oh, Laura, how does it feel for you being the only black person in the room?" And it's not something that I was consciously like thinking, and you're like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm the only black person in this room. Oh my goodness. It was brought to my attention in that moment. So mind you, I was still like feeling my way in this, right? In my space. Yeah, it took me aback, but it didn't fully sink. But looking back, that was a seed of what was to come, a tester of what was to actually come, that you are othered. Because I was exposed to all skin tones when I was growing up. I was exposed. I wasn't, yes, in the minority, but I was exposed to this. So it wasn't a strange thing to sit next to someone who is lighter, who is white, or whatever skin tone. It wasn't, it was quite normal to interact.
Mm-hmm.
So to then be picked out and be asked, oh, how does that feel? It's like, oh, that's actually a question. That is a serious question. And then later on, fast forwarding, having my daughter, my daughter is 15 now. She was born here. This is my second daughter. For her to be coming home, mommy, this happened. Oh yeah, I was, like I'm being called like this loud, black, stereotype, typical character, a monkey, names. Is it like having your mind groomed, or I always say it's like being force fed blackness, because that's who I am. I don't need to be force fed it, because I am who I am, and I take pride in who I am. So should the other person. So should that other person with a different skin tone, because we are coexisting as humans here on this earth. We were made different for a reason. We are beautiful as we are. So to have that, to be raised in a space where I am told I am enough as I am, and to then migrate to a space whereby there are questions. You are being like your head is being turned to the color of your skin. It's like, what is going on? So it took a lot of adjusting. It took a lot of switching of the mind and remembering who I am, tapping into who my father said I am, tapping into who God says I am, remembering my faith, remembering. It takes a lot, because it does not stop. We are living in a very hostile space. It's going. It's not stopped. So my work really changed. It shifted. No longer was it about fashion. No longer was it about bringing work in the runway. In 2007, I sat at a bus stop. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. I was coming from that time. This was such a turning point for me in my life. I remember I was coming from home. I didn't know those days. I would not know like whether I'm going to work, I'm not going to work, what's going to happen. I would live from day to day. So that time, I'm coming from this really bad situation in the home. I'm going to work. I have to work. It was quite a tough time. I'm sitting by that bus stop, and I had a dawning moment, a turning moment, a God moment, whereby I literally connected and understood fully. I had a visual understanding of how powerful one we are as women. So this is now to do with women. That was my women moment. Like how powerful we are as women. But looking back, what's quite interesting is that how tough situations can squeeze out beauty. There's a piece that I actually wrote, a small one that's called Beautiful Ashes. Like, you are coming from this very bad space, but it's it squeezing out something beautiful out of you. So I remember sitting at that bus stop and promising myself that one day I'm going to do something that will support women. One day. Because I cannot be the only woman who's going through this. I'm not. I know I'm not. And there's a lot going on in life, because as women, there's a lot that we carry. Now it's whatever our background, whatever, whether we migrated, whether we didn't migrate, but there's a lot that goes on in our spaces in order to just come and stop us giving birth to what we've been called to do in this world. And it comes in different layers. Yes, we can be born in a space whereby we have everything, but then migration comes and chokes you in some sort of level. And then we've got the discrimination story. And then we've got other stories. They're coming. It's layer after layer after layer after layer. How do we actually break through all these barriers and all these labels and all? It's labor. It's emotional labor. But the thing that has really helped me is my faith and my creativity. That has helped me.
And you're the founder of Maokwo. You use the word minoritized for the artists that you work with. I found that a very interesting word choice, minoritized. And then when I hear you talking, I understand it more, because you're talking about something which happens to people. It's not that people are a minority; it's that they are minoritized. It is done by other people. They are identified as a minority. It's some characteristic is identified or experienced. And a lot of what I read on the Maokwo website is about safety, about providing safety for people in order to flourish as artists, in order to, I think, have some sense of well-being, to flourish as individuals. Can you talk a bit about Maokwo and your work there, and the reasons that you formed the organization?
I formed the organization like it came, I'll say like it organically formed itself. It's like, again, identifying the gaps, because I didn't have space. There was no space for me as an artist. And waking up to that reality, noticing that, okay, there's not a lot of us. And a lot of us, again, I'm talking about the minoritized groups. And the stories sound so similar, like, but yeah, I am new here in this space. But the stories, they're like, they've been going on for generations. And so how do we make room? How do we make space? I have to say there's someone that I call my mom. She's so, when I was doing my studies, she's going back. She saw that, okay, I think, Laura, what you're doing, it would work really well in communities. But I resisted for many years, about 3 years. I would say, no, that's not my plan. My plan is A, B, C, D. You know my plan. Please don't bring me into this. Because she's originally from Zimbabwe, and she was really into community things. And I was like, I don't even see myself in communities. I have a plan. I want to do this. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. But because of her, I went and volunteered at Coventry as part of my placement at Coventry and Refugee Center. I volunteered. I led that was my first art workshop to lead. And it was a group of women who are from asylum seeking and refugee background. I never looked back. That was it for me. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I see it. So as a result of that, we started our own community group where we started to work with women from all backgrounds, using art as a tool to just help them relax and talk, have a safe space to just come and talk. A lot happened in that space. Women came, some of them, they would have been here for quite a number of years. They don't feel confident to go to work. Some ended up actually looking for jobs, feeling confident to actually go look for a job. So a lot. And it wasn't only a space for only migrant women. It was open to women who felt they can be part of that. So it was a good mix where women would just feel quite safe to share. So from that, I believe that was quite a strong base for Maokwo, how Maokwo started. So I saw how this gathering, how powerful just having art as a tool works, one. Two, but at the same time, At some point during that time, there was a woman, this is just one incident, but there was a woman that I met. We used to meet in this group, and she was a very good mathematician. She was an amazing, very clever, intelligent, but she comes from a Muslim background where she wears a hijab. In the times that we used to meet together, she would talk about, the challenges that she's faced around finding jobs and proper jobs. So going a few years down the line, I met her and she was saying, okay, I so far I've done some teachers training and I stopped. She mentioned another job, she's done that and she stopped. All because of discriminatory practice and racism in those spaces. But the thing that really hit me when I met her, she said, Laura, the problem now is my children are not, they don't want to go to uni anymore. Because they're saying, Mommy, if you are going through this, we are like you. We will face the same thing. So what is the point of, going further with our studies? So that was painful. So it's this impact that this disease, it's a disease that it has on the next generation to the next generation to the next generation.
Mm.
So when Maokwo was born, it was born from that place of whose voice, who's telling the stories? How are we approaching the stories? Two, what is it? How are we making space? How are we making room? And who is interested? Why are they interested? Are there any tokenistic practices in there? Why are they interested in that? How are we making room? How are we connecting the young people, the women, these creative humans? How are we looking after their gifts? Because we have something to give. Like I mentioned before, I literally forgot that I was interested in writing. I was interested in reading when I came because my mind went on break. I had to deal with what was right in front of me. So Maokwo is about that, caring and appreciating that it doesn't matter whether your qualifications have the stamp of the British stamp, the UK stamp, you have something to give. You have something to give in this space. Let's sit down and find out. Let's discover it together. So how we actually approach it with so much sensitivity, Chris.
Yeah.
I can't say like we'll always get it right, but I used to be like the service user on the other end. There are times that I felt used.
Yeah.
There are times that I felt like, what am I even doing here? Why have I been invited here? I wouldn't be the only one in the room thinking this. The same would go to the other people. If you dare talk about it, they would open up.
Yeah.
How do we as an organization create a space that appreciate that and that is so aware of if we are having a partnership, why are we part of this partnership? What does it mean? We will not always get it right, like I say, because their surprises will always come up. We've had surprises. We've had challenging partnerships. We've been in really challenging, and it will continue. It will not stop. The reality is it will not stop, unfortunately. But our duty, I call myself a creative visionary because whatever it is that I'm doing, I'm thinking of the next generation. I'm thinking of, okay, what legacy?
Mm-hmm.
What does that have to do with tomorrow? What foundation are we laying for those who are yet to come, for those who are still migrating? What speckle of change can we bring into that space? Because the system is bigger, it's the decision makers are there.
Yeah.
And what can we do here on the ground in order to support and bring out that richness that we believe, that I totally believe that if we dare, all of us dare to embrace each other, we are stronger. It's why should it be about color? It's some call it naive, but the reality for me is why should it be about color? We've been brain.
Yeah, and and people with power have manipulated color for centuries, right? For their purposes, for money, for power, and it's still there.
It's still there. It goes on. It carries on. Yeah.
But the question of, you said often artists, you look around a room and you've felt a tokenism. You felt, why am I in this room? Why is this organization working with me? Can we talk a bit about that? Because that's obviously really important. And we talk about the Art 27 network. This is a group of organizations that are formed, and part of their work is with people who have migrated, people with who have migrated as refugees, that have migrated from war, that have migrated from the ever-growing list of reasons people are forced to migrate for safety. But it can still happen, of course. People can still work in ways where, it's not equal in terms of power. You got people in organizations deciding on new projects, inviting artists into new projects and working for a couple of months, and then the project ends and the collaboration finishes. My simple version of this question is how to stop that. But I don't think there's a simple answer to that question. But I wonder how best organizations can start to be aware of this, perhaps, or can start to think differently about the way they're working with artists.
Mm. I think it's around care that when we work with marginalized groups, it's very important for organizations to be so sensitive to care, that there is to be so aware that we are talking about emotional labor, we are talking about trauma, generations of trauma. So there's a lot of sensitivity, and not sensitivity. I'm not saying sensitivity in the way of like walking on eggshells, but sensitivity to care, making sure that, like, most of the time for us, we always bring in someone who is a therapeutic background, counseling background to spaces, to workshops. There's a real need for that in spaces and in conversations, in delivering workshops, whatever it is. There's a real need for integrating everything with care, well-being, value. We are actually, at the moment, we are currently looking at the project that we produce and really ensuring that we don't fall into the trap of project to project to project to project. Because how we've managed to operate how we operate is because I started this as a passion project, basically. It's a passion, and there was no money attached to it. I didn't know much about funding and applying for funding, and it was a struggle to do that. So I actually, looking back, I thank God that that was the case, that it was actually a struggle, because we managed to actually create a firm foundation and understanding of how we want to be, and really hold on to our identity, our vision and beliefs and values, whereby I think funding, the more I started to understand about funding, I could see how funding can literally just quickly change your vision and make you become. So I think if we are talking about how do we work well, it's really challenging funding the system as organizations. We have a duty to challenge what they ask of us if we are actually wanting to operate from an authentic space, from a space of love, from a space of care. Because I believe that these social enterprises, these Maokwo is not called love as an organization. Because if all of us we could have a name, all of our names as social enterprise, those with social issues, we all our names will be love,
Yes.
because that's what we are looking for. Change, we are looking for something inside of us made us want to see something, and that is a call to love, but it requires radical love. It is not just love in a lovey-dovey kind of way, but it's radical. We have to dig deep in order to operate from that authentic space. We have to sometimes go against the grain, but if it's just one or two of us doing that, then it becomes harder. So as when we are working with these minoritized groups, I believe that as organizations, let's look at who is operating, who's making the decisions on the top. Who are these people on the top? What do they look like? What is their own lived experience? Because I believe that, because I drive a lot from my lived experience. I drive a lot from the visceral feeling of wanting to see change, right? Because I've been there and I continue to be in that space in different shapes or forms. I am no longer in a space that I was 10 years ago, but I'm in another space that is different, right? But I still face a different type of challenge, right? I need from that space. It's good to have someone who is seeing from another type of lens as well. Because if I'm just seeing and running with it in my own one lens, that lens, it's not healthy. So there needs to be some sort of balance from the top. But power is so sweet. Why are we not letting go and saying, okay, you've got the lived experience, and then let's work alongside this person, whether they are British born and they don't have no clue about migration, like as to how it actually feels, the lived experience. It's okay. Because if we sit together and we look at it from the point of that love, we'll make a good balanced change. But the problem is that there's a savior mentality that keeps going. But not only is it a savior, it is a power thing. Because if organizations were to say, okay, we are working with migrants, we are working with refugees and asylum seekers, they're bringing them to the board meetings, they're bringing someone that they feel like, okay, oh yeah, let them sit at the table. Let them be at a space where they make decisions. We need to bring and pull all these people up with us. Yes, it's not everyone who's going to come up, but that's how we can create change there. But if we keep sitting there on those tables on our own, because if I say like, okay, I'm going to be the face of Maokwo down into like the next 20 years, I don't want to be that. I want someone else to come and drive this. It is not my space. I'm saving. If we just understand that we are saving and loving radically, we are able to let go.
Laura, thanks. It's brilliant to talk to you and listen to you. I've learnt and I've listened to what you've said. I appreciate it. ReSounding is brought to you by the Art27 Network, a network of like-minded initiatives using art and culture to respond to the ongoing crisis of displacement of human beings in Europe and around the world. To find out more and to join our growing network, you can visit our website, art27.art, or follow us on Facebook at Art27. This podcast was produced and edited by Ed Holland. The theme tune was written by Matteo Galesi in collaboration with SYNCR. Thank you for listening.